Setting up maps in your virtual tabletop can end up taking a lot of time. When I talk to dungeon masters about how they spend their time preparing their D&D games, dungeon masters who prepare their games online spend the most amount of their time getting their maps prepared of all of the activities they do during their game prep. Today, we're going to take a look at a way to set up maps online using my virtual tabletop of choice, Owlbear Rodeo. And we're going to set up a very big dungeon. We're going to set up Castle Ravenloft, every floor of Castle Ravenloft, and we're going to set it all up in under 10 minutes. Before we begin, I want to spend a few minutes offering some tips for speeding up the preparation of maps in your virtual tabletop of choice. Probably number one is not worrying about aligning the grid. When you're using a map in a virtual tabletop, almost every VTT lets you turn off grid lines and also lets you turn off snap to grid. If you don't have to worry about perfectly lining up your grids with the grid of the underlying map, it saves a tremendous amount of time. Instead, make sure that the size of your grid is roughly the same size as what you would expect a square to be in the map, so that the tokens fit the map the way you expect them to fit. You don't have to worry about aligning the grid, and you don't have to worry about having grid lines visible. And when you turn both of these features off, it speeds up all of your prep considerably when you're setting up a map. Now, another tip is not to spend hours setting up every single token for every monster that could appear in a map. Instead, you can keep a handful of generic tokens on hand and use something like Token Stamp 2 to build tokens for the really important monsters. And if you really have to, you can use Token Stamp 2 to generate a token for a monster during the game itself. It'll take a couple minutes to do so, but once you have it, you're ready to go, and it saves you a tremendous amount of time because you don't have to set up every single monster in every potential room ahead of time. We can also let go of trying to control how players are going to roll their dice. Let them roll however they want. If they have physical dice on their desk, that's great. If they want to roll using D&D Beyond, that's great. If they want to roll with whatever dice you have in your virtual tabletop, that's fine too. But when you let go of the idea that they all have to roll dice in a particular method with a particular tool, it can save a lot of time because you don't have to set up all of the characters in your VTT in order to have it up and running. Now, the last one is a hard question that we need to ask ourselves. With every function, with every feature that we're adding into our virtual tabletop, we really need to ask ourselves if this feature is helping us share stories with our players at the table. There are a tremendous number of features that exist in powerful virtual tabletops. Everything from dynamic lighting to sound effects to weather effects to animations. And it all looks or sounds pretty cool initially, but then when we're actually into the D&D game, not only might it not be helping share the story, it might actually be distracting. So it can help us to look at every single feature. And even though we know it looks kind of cool, is it really worth it? And particularly, is it worth the setup time? Now, I don't get to answer this question for you. Only you get to answer this question. If it's useful for you, it's useful. If you and your players really enjoy it, go with the gods. It's not up to me to determine this. But I think it is important that we each ask ourselves what features are really adding to the game, what features are really adding to the story that we're all watching unfold at the table, and which features might be taking a tremendous amount of time and offering very little value or even a negative value to the game that we're running. All right, with those tips out of the way, let's get Castle Ravenloft set up in under 10 minutes. For this example, I'm going to be using my virtual tabletop of choice, Owlbear Rodeo. I love Owlbear Rodeo, and the reason I love it is how fast it is for me to get things set up and get it in front of the players. It's an excellent tool, and I highly recommend you check it out. I'm also going to be using the Castle Ravenloft battle maps from Venetus Maps, available on the DMs Guild. You can find the link to these maps in the show notes below. I love these maps because they offer every single floor and they offer them at a size and a resolution that's perfect for virtual tabletops. There's a whole bunch of features in this, including printable maps that are available in this map pack, but I'm really focused just on the VTT maps. So I've already purchased the maps. They cost $10, and it's totally worth it if you're running Castle Ravenloft to get all of these maps available for your VTT for $10. So they offer a whole bunch of different versions of the maps, but we're going to grab this VTT compressed floors set. So we just click, once we've purchased it, we just click it and it downloads. It downloads to our download folder, and we are ready to extract it. So we've got the zip file downloaded to Explorer. We're going to right click and we're going to extract all. We're going to just do it right in the downloads folder for ease. It extracts all of the folders. And now we have a VTT compressed floors directory. And in here, let's view this we're going to view it by details. And we're going to take a look because there's only certain ones that we actually want for this. And what we're looking for is the no grid versions of the maps. So once we have all that set, now we've extracted all of the maps, and we're going to go ahead and import them into Owlbear Rodeo. So we load up Owlbear Rodeo, we start a game, we don't worry about setting up a password and anything like that, and we're given our blank screen. In the upper right corner, we click Select Map. This brings up our map set, and we can click the plus sign here to import maps. We open up the folder, we get down to the maps, and we can actually select multiple maps for this. So we're going to include them all the no grid versions of every floor that's in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to skip the unfurnished versions. We don't need those. And we also want the ones that have no grid on them because we're not going to worry about lining up the grid. And with the 6 maps, we click open. Owlbear Rodeo then grabs the maps and installs them into your Owlbear Rodeo installation here in your browser. Takes a little bit of time for each one to come in. Each one pops in. These maps have already been compressed, so they'll actually be a good size for us to send to our players through Owlbear Rodeo when we're actually playing. The smaller the map, the easier it is for the players to be able to see the maps on their side. So now we have all 6 maps already installed and ready to go. But we're not done yet. It's not quite that easy. For each floor of the map, there are 2 things we need to do. First, we want to make sure that the size of it is sized correctly for the tokens that we want to drop on it. It's not exactly the same as getting the grid aligned. It's just making sure that the tokens are about the right size for the rooms of the chamber. The second thing we're going to do is set up the Fog of War for each one so that we can expand the Fog of War while we're playing the game during the game. I'm going to go through just each map, starting with the upper left one. So when we look at the map itself, we can see what it looks like. We can zoom in. But we're actually going to go and we're going to edit each map by clicking the little edit map icon. We go in here and we can immediately see that like the grid size is way too big, right? So in most cases, we're going to double the number of squares. Owlbear Rodeo tries to do its best bet at lining up squares with the map. And sometimes it lines them up perfectly, but many times it doesn't, and we have to do it ourselves. But instead of trying to line it up exactly right, we just want to get it close enough that it'll work. So in this case, we're just going to double it to about 50 by 40. And now we can zoom in and we can say, okay, does that look about right? If we're looking at any given chamber in here, does it look like the squares are about the right size for the tokens? And yeah, it looks about right. So good enough. In this case, we can see the grid doesn't go all the way down to the bottom. So we're going to extend it to about 50. That makes her. Now, another thing we're going to do is we're going to turn off snap to grid. This way we don't have icons that are kind of zipping all over and snapping into parts of the map that don't really work out well. So we turn off snap to grid. And then we hit save. We can test it out by opening up the map, going to a location, and dropping a token. And say, is that token about the right size? I like to measure it up against the doors. And the answer is yeah, that's about right. You know, these tokens are the right size for this map. So that one is done. So then the next thing we do is we zoom out and we set up our Fog of War. This little cloud tool over in the toolbar, that is our Fog of War. We want to make sure that the clipping is off. You're either cutting the fog or you're putting the fog in. When we turn off the scissors, that means we are putting a fog in. And I set up the big square, and we just draw a big square. Now we have our Fog of War. We can test it by clicking this little enable fog, and it shows us that people can't see what's there. So that map is now set and ready to go. So now we do the same thing for all of the other maps. Click it, click edit, take a look, say, yeah, those squares are way too big. Double it to about, we'll do 55 by 55. And look at that. Yeah, that's about right. You know, that's close enough. Turn off snap to grid, hit save, open it up, zoom out, stick on a Fog of War. Next map, click edit, zoom in, take a look at the squares. We'll go with 60 by 50. Looks about right. Zoom in, take a look around. Yeah, looks good. Turn off snap to grid. Hit save, open it up, stick on the Fog of War. Next map, the Larders. Click edit. This one definitely needs more. Zoom in, looks good. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect, right? Just enough that the tokens will have a little bit of room to move around on the map. Doesn't have to be exactly right. That's really a key to making all the stuff with a VTT easier. Letting go of perfection. Don't let perfection be the enemy of good enough. It's really important for this. Hit save. That one is done. Oh, we forgot to do the Fog of War. Zoom out. Drop a cloud. Put the Fog of War in. Larders are done. This one is huge. Like, those squares are definitely not right. This is the biggest map in the place. By 60 by 60. Zoom in, take a look at the squares. That looks about right. Turn off snap to grid, hit save. Go into the map itself, zoom out, drop in the Fog of War. And the last map. Court of the Count. Squares are definitely too big. Turns out 50 by 50 is about right for all of these. Again, you want to just take a look. And if it goes over the edge of the map, it doesn't matter. Looks good. Size looks good. Turn off snap to grid. Hit save. Open it up. Zoom out. Stick on the Fog of War. Bang. So now we have all 6 maps for Ravenloft. Every single floor of Ravenloft. We've imported them into Owlbear Rodeo. We've set up the grid so that if we put a token on it, it looks right. We've set up the Fog of War so that it can work out. What we'll do is, since we know where the characters are going to start, we'll go to the main floor, and we will use the cloud feature to remove the Fog of War for the first chamber. So now this is what they're going to see when they start. And we can drop character tokens on. We'll use the generic Owlbear tokens. We've got ourselves a rogue, we've got ourselves a ranger, we've got ourselves a fighter, and we've got ourselves a paladin. Right? And they are ready to go. We can turn off the view so we can see it. And then as they are expanding, we just keep cutting away pieces of the map so that they can see what's going on where. As they explore Castle Ravenloft, they go in here and they have their meeting with the Count. So that is how we set up all of Castle Ravenloft, all of the maps for Castle Ravenloft in Owlbear Rodeo in under 10 minutes. But what about tokens? What do we want to do about tokens? Well, there's a few things you can do. The laziest approach that I, of course, endorse is using the tokens on the side that Owlbear Rodeo has as their default. As you can see, we already use really nice tokens that represent each of the characters. You can label them and you're all set. You also have a whole variety of different tokens that you can use for various monsters. So we could use skulls for zombies. You know, we can use different ones for NPCs. Another way is to use a program called Token Stamp. I really like Token Stamp a lot. It's a very easy way to build tokens. I even use it when I'm just generating tokens on the fly during a game. If I can just take 30 seconds of time to generate a token, I can go do it. So let's say we want to have, for example, a Strahd token. We click on it. We can go to Google, look for Strahd. We can find an image of Strahd that we like. I kind of like this one from Van Richten's guide. We save the image locally. Save image as. Stick it into our downloads folder. Go into Token Stamp. Go choose image. Go to our downloads folder that we just downloaded it. Import it. You grab it. I like to do big face shots. I think it's always cool to do a big face shot. So I like to extend it way out. Put the token in there. And then I like to change the border tint to something that kind of fits. Maybe we want to do a deep red for this guy, right? Because he's Strahd. Usually I try to pick something that fits some of the color of the token. That looks pretty good. And hit download, right? That token's now downloaded. You can actually do a bunch of tokens like this and import them all. I'm just going to import one. So you click on here, you go into import, grab your token, and you've got yourself a Strahd token, right? Shows up here. You grab Strahd, and there's Strahd in your map, and you're ready to go. So if you have particular monsters that you want to drop in, you can do that. You can also just use the generic tokens that come with Owlbear Rodeo. If you want to set up tokens ahead of time, I wouldn't set up everything. I'd set up the tokens you know you're going to use, and I'd use generic tokens for a lot of the monsters if you can get away with it. Saves you a lot of time. So another trick is if you use Discord for your online chat, if you use it for audio and video or anything else, and you have the Avrae bot set up. Avrae is a bot that connects D&D Beyond to Discord. One of the things you can do is generate tokens in Discord and drop them right into Owlbear Rodeo with just drag and drop. So let's say I want to have an actual gargoyle token. I can type token gargoyle, hit return, and it generates a gargoyle token. I can take this, I can drag it right over my Owlbear Rodeo map and place it, and now I've got a gargoyle token right in the map. I can hit the Alt key and create multiple gargoyles. So I actually want these gargoyles in here because this is where they are set. We'll get rid of that guy. So when you have Avrae installed and you have D&D Beyond and Discord connected together, you can get tokens for any monster that you have paid for as part of your D&D Beyond subscription. So you can make tokens for all kinds of things, including our friend Strahd. So let's say we don't really like this Strahd token and we want a different one. We go back to Discord, token, Strahd. It offers us the option. We want Strahd von Zarovich, the second one, and we get a token. We drag it, grab it, drag it, drop it into Owlbear Rodeo, And we have our Strahd token. Really fast way of adding tokens to your setup. I think all of the SRD monsters you have access to, even if you don't have any products in D&D Beyond. But for every product that you own, all of the artwork for the monsters that are in there you can generate as tokens using Avrae. It's a really nice trick. So that is how to get all of Castle Ravenloft set up in Owlbear Rodeo in 10 minutes. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, you can help me out by subscribing to the Sly Flourish newsletter, subscribing to my videos on YouTube, supporting me directly on Patreon, or picking up any of my books. Thank you very much and have a great day.